Adam back in here for some more top stories. We're going to start with the latest, Adam, on the Cowboys head coaching search.
Well, they're not rushing into anything right now, Laura. They're taking their time as everybody waits to see if and when talks heat up with Deion Sanders. Again, Jerry Jones and Deion spoke this past week. Deion said he's intrigued by what Jerry Jones had to say. And that's the interesting part of this, but there's no interview scheduled. Talks will continue. We'll see where it goes. Dallas obviously just starting out in its coaching search. And meanwhile, the Cowboys' former head coach was in Chicago today at the Bears training facility. Love the idea of that. The former Packers and Cowboys head coach in the Bears building, meeting with Bears officials to discuss that job. And clearly, Mike McCarthy has respect amongst players across the league. The Bears know the type of job he could do with their quarterback, Caleb Williams, and that's why they've spent today going over. But take a look at all the candidates that the Bears have either completed interviews with or requested interviews with. That is a wide swath of candidates out there, and we'll see if and when the Bears narrow that list down. But Mike McCarthy, obviously the latest candidate, and won't be the last one to interview for that Chicago Bears head coaching job.
A lot of people on that list, Adam. Caleb Williams told the St. Brown podcast what he's looking for in his next head coach.
I want an offensive-minded guy so I can build with him and be with that coach for the next 19, 17, 15 years. So I can also learn and grow and things like that. But if we get an overall grand scheme coach and is good with time management, good with the clock, good with helping control the game, just because it's a big factor, obviously, when we played our first time at Charles Place, big factor is being able to help control the clock, helping find the right guys to win championships. I mean, that's the only goal that I have for my NFL career is to go win a championship, and championships start with one.
All right, so there was a lot there, J-Mac. You heard what Caleb. Maybe some shots fired. I don't know. Either way, you heard what he's saying that he wants. Is McCarthy the right guy for the Bears?
I mean, I look at all the names on that list. I'm wondering why the heck Dan Orlovsky's name not on that.
Dan,
he needs an offensive-minded guy. Time management. Dan, you got time management.
I was thinking the same thing
on time every week.
myself.
I got to get up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I look at Mike McCarthy, and sure, I think there's a piece of this where he's been around quarterbacks. He's developed them. He's been a head coach before. But it's like at the same time, I look at all those names on that list, and for the whole season, we've talked about Mike McCarthy in this offense. It's simple. He doesn't do enough to give his offensive guys, his quarterback, an advantage within the system. So we're going to say all of those things. Then how do we feel as though Mike McCarthy is the best option for Caleb Williams to move him forward? That's my question of all of these candidates that we're looking at. We don't see anyone that could possibly say, hey, Caleb gets this guy. We can think that he can take him to the next level.
I think it's the best option I have for weeks, and I think it checks off all the three boxes, or the three most important boxes. Number one, walk into the locker room, you immediately have a winner. The expectation is to now win. I don't have to figure out or hope or cross my fingers that he can win. He's done it everywhere he's gone. Number two, every quarterback that he's had develops to a higher level under him. He did it with Aaron Rodgers. And what was Aaron Rodgers when he was young? Super talented, wildly creative, needed to play on time a little bit.
Very Caleb Williams.
But he didn't take away that beauty of the game away, right? Matt Flynn played under Mike McCarthy, lit it up. Dak Prescott went to a new level. And I know Dak Prescott wasn't, quote unquote, like young when he went there, but he was on still the heart of his career. I think the third thing is this. Caleb, where's the number one place he's got to grow? Caleb, what's the play? What's the defense? What does that mean to me? Caleb last year still played with a question mark way too often. Mike McCarthy will make it an exclamation point. We're calling this play, you're throwing the ball here versus this coverage. If it gets covered, then go make a play. Yeah. That's the difference. That's why I love him there.
I have a quick question. So you wouldn't have McCarthy calling plays, though, would you? Or would you?
I don't mind Mike McCarthy calling plays. Really? I think Mike McCarthy is a good offensive feel scheme or game caller of the game when it comes to feel. I do think that they need somebody in the offensive coordinator role that has a little bit of a touch to the modern day football. Yes. Thomas Brown that has.
I've heard you say that
the new age concepts that are easier for quarterbacks.
The reason why I don't mind Mike McCarthy is all the reasons why you mentioned. Because the simplicity of the West Coast that he runs with in today's day and age that feels a little bit old
school. Which is based on what, pass game wise?
Timing. It's based on repetition. It's based on being strategic and when you take your shots. These are all things that would benefit Caleb, right? So I'm not going to rehash everything you said. Aaron Rodgers I have down is a great comp for him as a young quarterback who needs to learn to be on rhythm. Part two of this is, and this might be my bias as a wide receiver, I'm sure J-Mac will feel this as well, there are 52 other players in that locker room.
Yeah.
And we can't be hiring a head coach solely on what the quarterback needs. Does he need to develop? Absolutely. But there are other men that you need to make sure are on the same page and can push forward. And as somebody who's been a winner everywhere he's gone, and with that head coaching experience, it feels like a slam dunk.
Can we lose the narrative that we often say, well, the young quarterback, you got to give him an offensive mind. Look what happened with Josh Allen when he went with Sean McDermott. Lamar Jackson when he went with Harbaugh. C.J. Stroud when we went to Miko Ryans. Dan Quinn and James Daniels. I can only think of 3 examples where the team hired a coach that was strictly for the young quarterback and it worked out well. I think it was Sean McVay with Jared Goff. It was Zach Taylor with Joe Burrow. And who was the third one? I'm trying to think of it. There's not a lot of examples of it working out ideally for, hey, we got to get the young quarterback to play well. Let's hire the head coach on that regard.
It'll be interesting to see this hiring cycle when it all gets finished, because I do think you're hearing more of a rumbling toward get somebody who can be a great leader, who can manage an entire team, instead of the phase that we were in for a longer time, which was pair these offensive minds with the quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
We'll see. Cowboys.
And it's very, very interesting, man. Obviously very sad because the relationships, we had with Coach McCarthy and everything he's done for our program. 3 straight 12-5 seasons, playoff appearances, and obviously an unfortunate year due to injuries and things like that. But it is devastating. And, he's always been good to us as a unit, us to coaches, players. It's going to be very interesting, due to the free agents, the coaching. It's like, it's going to be a complete reset.
J-Mac, what needs to change for the Cowboys on defense?
A complete reset, just like Michael Parsons just said. When you rank in the bottom 5 of all rushing statistics, along with just points allowed, you have to figure out some things. And to me, defensively, they have to figure out what's their identity. To start a game, you have to be strong up front, the middle of their defense. Who's the bell cow that's setting the tone and setting the tempo for them? You have a pass rush on the outside. You have a corner in the secondary. You need those guys in the front, especially at that middle linebacker spot with Kendricks being a free agent, to come in and build that identity.
I cannot wait to see who they end up going with as head coach, but everything else in and around that, too, is really important. All right, still ahead on the show.
Here, both in height and stature. Join us now.
What? Today I'm not a little man. I'm a medium-sized man.
You're a medium guy with a fantasy football trophy, which makes you this much taller. Hey, first day that Mike McCarthy, former Cowboys coach, can meet with teams. Who's interested in his services?
Well, he will take advantage of that moment by meeting with the Chicago Bears in person for their head coaching vacancy. And what makes this especially interesting for McCarthy at this point is that all these other candidates who have done in-person, or I should say virtual interviews because they are under contract with other teams, they cannot do in-person interviews until January 20th. Mike McCarthy, because his contract expired, he can do these in-person interviews now, essentially gets himself a 5-day head start. It is expected that he'll meet with the Bears. Also, the Saints have shown interest as well. We'll see if other teams also line up. But right now for McCarthy, the Bears and the Saints feel like the 2 teams that have shown the most interest.
So January 20th, of course, this coming Monday, so we'll see that pick up a little bit for some of these other candidates. Speaking of candidates, I mentioned 6 jobs, and the Cowboys helmet was on their little round carousel. What are you hearing? Give us some of the candidates. We know Prime's one of the hot names out there. What are you hearing attached to the Cowboys?
Well, I mentioned the idea of coaches that are not under contract. One of them is Robert Saleh. He is a candidate who can meet with teams, and it is expected that at some point he will meet with the Cowboys about their head coaching job. You see there, though, Kellen Moore and Deion Sanders. Sanders has had communication with the Cowboys. That has not escalated any further. Kellen Moore has not had any contact yet, but it is expected that perhaps he would also be a candidate for that job. Now, let's move to the New Orleans Saints here. Not necessarily one of the highest coveted jobs. I've talked to a number of the candidates out there, and this really doesn't necessarily feel like it's the 1, the 2, or even the 3 slot, but I will still say Aaron Glenn is one of those big name coaches who the Saints would love to talk more to. Again, can't really talk to him in person until January 20th. They did do the virtual interview. We'll see if Glenn, come next week, can maybe perhaps schedule something in person. The New York Jets job, obviously, I mentioned coveted being a key word here. The Jets job, not necessarily all that coveted at this point. Matt Nagy certainly seems like a dream choice at this point, given his tenure with the Chiefs at this point, but Nagy has been resistant to really taking any head jobs right now, given his position with the Chiefs and his ability to coach Patrick Mahomes. So we'll see if they can maybe get a meeting with him. Now, the Jaguars, I want you to listen carefully here, because I keep hearing from coaching candidates that this is actually the most coveted job available right now, and I think it's going under the radar. And I keep hearing that Ben Johnson actually has his eyes squarely on that Jaguars position. I'm not saying that that's his top choice, but I am saying that that is a job that really interests him. Now, the Trent Baalke situation with him currently holding the position of general manager does throw a bit of a wrench into this, but I'm telling you, I have spoken to several different candidates who say that
Hey there, Cowboys fan. Have you heard the shocking news? Mike McCarthy is officially out as head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I know it caught me off guard too. But here's the kicker. Jerry Jones didn't see it coming either. Apparently, McCarthy ended contract talks out of nowhere, leaving Jerry surprised and probably scrambling for what's next. NFL Network's Jane Slater even mentioned that Jerry expected these discussions to continue beyond Monday. Instead, McCarthy decided it was time to walk. Oh wait, now, I want to know what you think. Were you expecting this move? Drop your initial reaction in the comments below because I'm dying to hear your take. And while you're at it, give this video a thumbs up if you're as shocked as I am. Let's keep this conversation going. There's so much more to uncover about what went on behind the scenes. So, what exactly happened behind the scenes? Let's break it down. Jerry Jones reportedly had big plans involving McCarthy. According to Jane Slater, Jerry even considered bringing Jason Witten into the fold as part of a succession plan. Sounds interesting, right? But McCarthy, he wasn't having it. Instead of playing along with Jerry's vision, he chose to walk away. Maybe he didn't like being part of an heir apparent scenario, or perhaps it was something else entirely. Either way, it's clear McCarthy decided that staying in Dallas wasn't in his best interest anymore. Now here's a question for you. Do you think Jerry's plan with Jason Witten was a good idea, or does it feel like he's just grasping at straws? Let's settle this with a poll in the comments. Vote yes if you think it could have worked, or no if you're skeptical. What's even more intriguing is how amicable this split seemed. Jerry's official statement was full of praise for McCarthy, thanking him and his family for their time in Dallas. But come on, doesn't it make you wonder what really went down? Stick around because we're diving into what this means for the Cowboys' future. Next, alright, let's talk about what this means for the Cowboys heading into 2024. Instead of extending McCarthy's contract before the season, Jerry Jones decided to let him coach the final year of his deal. That decision alone raised eyebrows, didn't it? Now, with McCarthy gone, the Cowboys are left in a tough spot. A team without a head coach this close to the off-season? That's not exactly ideal for stability, especially when you're trying to build on a roster that already has its fair share of questions. Here's where I need your input. Do you think Jerry made the right call by waiting to negotiate, or should he have locked McCarthy in earlier? Let's debate this in the comments. Type right call if you agree with Jerry's strategy, or bad move if you think he fumbled this one. But the big question remains, who steps in to fill McCarthy's shoes? Let's get into the names being floated around right now. Now that McCarthy's out, the search for his replacement is already heating up, and let me tell you, the names being tossed around are enough to make any Cowboys fan sit up and take notice. The first name on everyone's lips? Deion Sanders, yeah, prime time himself. The current head coach at Colorado has been making waves, and let's be honest, his leadership style could bring a spark to this franchise. Imagine the energy he'd bring to Dallas, but he's not the only contender. Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is also in the mix. Moore knows this team well, and his offensive creativity could be just what the Cowboys need to finally get over the hump. So here's the big question. Who would you rather see leading the Cowboys next season, Deion Sanders or Kellen Moore? Cast your vote in the comments and let's see which name comes out on top. Of course, finding the right coach is only part of the equation. What about McCarthy's future? Stick around because we're wrapping up with where he might be headed and how it all ties back to the Cowboys. So, what's next for Mike McCarthy? Reports suggest he's already drawing interest from other teams, with the Chicago Bears being one of his first interviews. It looks like McCarthy isn't wasting any time finding his next opportunity. But here's something to think about. Will McCarthy's departure end up being a blessing or a setback for the Cowboys? That's the big question as we move forward. Let me know in the comments, do you think the Cowboys will bounce back stronger without McCarthy, or is this a step in the wrong direction? Don't forget to subscribe for more updates. We've got a lot to cover in the days ahead.